Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. I am the Crypto Crow, and today we're going to be talking about something that is, quite frankly, it's as much scary as it is exciting in a way. I'm not sure how you want to quantify this in terms of just emotion, excitement, fear, doubt, concern, all that good stuff. So before I get started, a couple things that I wanted to kind of touch on. Obviously, ADA Tokenizer.io is in beta. We've got a lot of big features coming. This is a project that I've been personally working on with my developers for a while now. You can mint your own NFTs, tokens, collections with a few clicks. Okay. A GUI interface. There's no command prompts. There's none of that crazy stuff. Truly, the people in the community have been really mind blown by this. So if you're at all curious about creating your own cryptocurrency token, your own NFT, or you've got a big collection that you're working on, we are actually working on features with this. You'll be able to mint on demand. I mean, within the next 30 days, we're going to be launching some functions that I don't even know. I don't know if they exist anywhere or not. Let me know in the comments below. What are your, tell me, what are your favorite NFT minting platforms that you're using? What are their fees? What do they do? What don't they do? Because we want to be number one. Now we're not directly trying to shut anybody down at all. I love everybody and anything that's doing anything positive on Cardano. But this is it's an ADA tokenizer. This is all about building NFTs and tokens on the Cardano blockchain. And pretty soon you'll be able to set up 10,000 NFTs, a whole collection, and basically not pay anything in fees until each NFT is selling. And then we also have our marketplace coming up. So make sure you check it out. Join the community. There's a link up top. Obviously a link in the description below. There's about, let me take a look. There's almost 170 people in the community. My developers in there just constantly answering questions, helping people, support, all kinds of stuff. It's really cool to watch grow. And I'm watching the back end of it. I think we're getting close to 800 users already, and it's exciting time. So also make sure you bookmark twistedtimes.io. This is my own personal NFT series that I'm doing. They're all done. All the NFTs are done. I have not put them all up here. I'm not going to. Some of them I'm going to save. Most of them I'm going to save until we launch them. But I am actively working on the digital treasure hunt for this. That is mind-numbing for me. It's going to be mind-numbing for all of you as well. But the whole gist of it is, you get the NFTs. There are going to be several versions of each one. There's going to be a one of one, which is going to be the one that has a lot of the codes and ciphers and stuff associated. And then there are going to be commons and then probably rares. So they're going to be, but any given NFT, I don't think there's going to be more than 20, maybe 30 of any given NFT, but different variations of them based on rarity. So they're all going to be very, very limited. But this is going to be, I think this is going to be hot. I really do. I think this is going to be hot. My artist is amazing. The imagery, the spoofs, the satire, all of it. You've got Halfway Harvey. He's got the Grim Reaper standing behind him, yet the guy's still on a park bench oogling chicks running by. The stuff is funny. You got Angry Alex. For those of you that know what Alex that might be referring to, and you've got all these gay frogs everywhere just dancing, and they're in the blue lily. If you don't get a kick out of these NFTs, you've got no sense of humor. Some of them are inspiring, some of them are funny. But they're all going to be very rare, to a large extent. So make sure you bookmark this because, we've got a growing community for that as well. And then finally, this is Rainmaker.com, spelled with 2 I's. But this is, I don't know if some of you guys will remember, I've had JD Seraphine on my channel. I call him, I totally just botched his name. But anyway, he's a producer in Hollywood. He does a lot of cool stuff. He's done some cool movies and all that. But ultimately, this is an app that we're going to be using because the Rainmaker app, let's just put it this way, CrowCoin is coming. And when it comes, you're going to be able to get it for free. Okay. This isn't going to be a big cash grab type deal. And then we're going to utilize CrowCoin so that, if you're minting NFTs on the tokenizer or you're doing stuff on the marketplace, if you're holding CrowCoin on your wallet, you're going to get discounted fees and minting fees and so forth. And you're going to be able to earn some using the Rainmaker app in the future. We're going to set up a campaign, and all you're going to have to do is help promote whether it's the tokenizer, basically things that I'm associated with. You help promote that, you're going to get Crow coins in exchange. And who knows what use cases will grow out of the Crow coin. But the Rainmaker app right now, I mean, there's a big prize pool. There's a lot of stuff going on. Check this out. There'll be more on it in the future. I'll probably have JD on the channel talking about this. But this has been a very big project they've been working on for quite some time. Now, without further ado, the question is, what is going to be the new world currency? A lot of people think, is it going to be Bitcoin? People think, is it going to be Cardano? Is it going to be Stellar Lumens or XRP? What is it? And the one thing that I've been learning about the current state of affairs in the United States and quite frankly, the world over, is if you want to better understand what's coming in the future, there's one website. There's literally one website. All you have to do is read. And it's almost like a crystal ball on the internet. And some of it's very scary. And when you read a lot of the stuff that's going on, you read some of the proclamations of what's coming in the future, such as you'll own nothing and be happy. Some of the stuff is just way out there, but the people associated with this group ultimately in one way or another kind of seem to control everything. And it's not some shadowy, dark thing. It's just kind of the way it seems to be. And I don't think anybody's eyes have been truly opened. I feel like so many eyes have been opened just in the last 4 years as to what's going on around us, who's really in control of what's going on. And, the big question for me, now I've done videos in the past where I've said, Bitcoin is going to be the big, one world currency, right? I don't think it is. I'm going to show you what I think it is. But I'm going to read this. This is on weforum.org. This is the World Economic Forum's website. Now, this article is a little old, dated back in April of 2018, okay? But I'm going to read this, and then we're going to talk about it in some detail. Now, as the risk of a U.S.-China trade war mounts, creating a geopolitically neutral and fair monetary system has become increasingly urgent. The shift from a unipolar to a multipolar world order has not been particularly orderly. Instead, it has produced a kind of monetary non-system that depends on a debt-driven, dollar-based model that is too pro-cyclical, fragile, and potentially biased to support the management of trade conflict. At the root of the problem are the structural trade and current. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to increase the size of this because I don't have my new glasses on. And it's difficult for me to read, and I'm messing up words, and I sound like I sound presidential reading this right now. Instead, it has produced a kind of monetary non-system that depends on a debt-driven, dollar-based model that is too pro-cyclical, fragile, and potentially biased to support the management of trade conflict. At the root of the problem are the structural trade and current account imbalances that arise from the so-called Triffin dilemma. In order to meet global demand for the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency, the United States must run persistent current account deficits with the rest of the world. Last year, that deficit reached $474 billion, or 2.4% of the U.S. GDP. To be sure, the guarantee that the U.S., as the issuer of the dominant international reserve currency, can acquire low-cost funding for its fiscal deficit and national debt amounts to what former French President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, I have no idea. You know how bad I am. If you watch me, you know how bad I am with pronouncing foreign names. Famously called America's exorbitant privilege. But that privilege can erode the country's fiscal discipline, as it has in recent years, resulting in high federal deficits and growing federal debt. Nothing new here. The policies favored by U.S. President Donald Trump's administration exacerbate this tendency. Recent tax cuts and increased military spending has led the International Monetary Fund to estimate that the U.S. international investment position will deteriorate in the coming years, with net liabilities reaching 50% of GDP by 2022, which is just next year. Moreover, Trump's threats of trade and currency wars are fueling fears that the U.S. dollar could become a weapon in geopolitical disputes. Such a step would trigger immense volatility throughout the international monetary system, throwing many economies, such as those that link their currencies to the U.S. dollar or hold a large volume of dollar reserves, into crisis. Of course, the Triffin dilemma can be avoided and America's outsized influence over the monetary system reduced. All that is needed is a major reserve currency that is not issued by a national authority. Okay, what they're saying, basically not a fiat currency, not something that's issued by any particular country. Gold was once supposed to fill this role, but it couldn't meet demand for global liquidity and a store of value. Well, because who's going to be carrying around big lumps of heavy gold everywhere? A better option is the IMF's Special Drawing Right, or SDR, which the Second Amendment of the body's Articles of Agreement asserts should become the world's principal reserve asset. Some, including former People's Bank of China Governor Zhu Jingquan and former Colombian Finance Minister Jose Antonio Ocampo, hope I got those right, have since advocated following through on that plan. Okay, they're already saying that some countries are already moving forward. This was back in 2018, okay, just as a reminder. Yet the SDR is not used widely enough to serve as a major international reserve currency. No, because nobody has their hands on it. Where do I get it? Where do you get this? According to a Palais Royal Initiative report, a key way to raise the SDR's global standing is through regular allocations of SDRs under appropriate safeguards, or even allocations in exceptional circumstances. The report also calls for the IMF to work with the private sector to explore ways in which the SDR could be more widely used in private transactions. A key hurdle for the SDR has always been the geopolitical interests and priorities of the reserve issuing central banks. Not just the US, but also the Eurozone, China, Japan, and the United Kingdom. But the advent of cryptocurrencies may offer another way. The private sector can work directly with central banks to create a digital SDR to use as a unit of account and store of value. Such an or electronic SDR would, in a sense, be the quintessential reserve asset because it would be fully backed by reserve currencies in the IMF determined ratio. The supply of eSDRs would be completely dependent on market demand. Of course, to enable a gradual shift from the US dollar to an eSDR as the dominant international reserve currency, a sufficiently large eSDR-dominated money market would need to be created. To that end, a politically neutral body owned by the private sector or central banks should be established to issue the asset. Participating central banks and asset managers would then have to swap their reserve currency holdings for eSDRs. once the private sector comes to view the eSDR as a less volatile unit of account than individual component currencies. In other words, ultimately what I believe they're talking about here is create, for those of you who remember Libra, right? You remember Libra with Facebook? They basically were creating a single token that represented the value of a basket of other tokens, of other fiat currencies from all over the place. That way it wasn't subject to the volatility or the debasement or whatever of any one particular fiat, like a stable token, but rather a basket of currencies from all over the place. I think this is one of the reasons why that was shut down, because that's exactly what the World Economic Forum wants to do. They don't want somebody that's controlling a social media platform, creating this, operating it. And what business does a social media platform have of establishing some sort of global currency anyway? So I think they ultimately pulled the plug on that. Now, that's not to say that Facebook may not someday be an issuer or a distributor of some kind with these SDRs. I mean, we all know Facebook is on board with whatever the powers that be want them to do. So, and that's a whole other rabbit hole that I'm not going to get into, but I have my own personal opinions. But ultimately, they may be used to facilitate this to some degree, but they're not going to be the ones controlling it or issuing it. They're going to be the ones distributing it at best. Now, to continue, once the private sector comes to view the eSDR as a less volatile unit of account than individual component currencies, asset managers, traders, and investors could begin to price their goods and services and value their assets and liabilities accordingly. For example, the Chinese government, which we're seeing is basically the model for everything else going on a global basis right now. And this takes me into a whole other kind of department of thought in terms of a technocracy. And are we, a lot of people are saying, you've got the right versus the left, and everybody's talking all political about socialism, fascism, all this stuff that they think is going on. But ultimately, like, to my understanding, Singapore is like the pinnacle of a true technocracy at work, right? And it basically, and this is a whole, there is such a huge rabbit hole. I have thought for so long about writing my in-depth opinion with sources and all kinds of stuff, but I just don't know if anybody, I feel like anything that I could read or explain to people about a lot of this stuff, or my opinions on what I think is going on, would only be read by the people that already understand it or know about it. The people that you want to reach don't seem to read very much, if I'm honest. And so they just kind of regurgitate whatever they're told in the easiest format they can pull their information, which seems to be major media, right? So, and that's just my opinion. If you're one of them, sorry, but that's just, I've had so many, I don't even want to call them arguments with people. I try to engage people in conversation. It just always ends up in some form of argument, because as soon as one of them gets triggered, they just start spouting insults and going crazy. I don't know. It's nonsensical to me, so I just disengage, and I'm like, okay, there's nothing I can do to educate you or help you in any way. But ultimately, what I'm seeing a lot of is this conversation about where the U.S. is going. And I always think of things hypothetically. Let's just say, at some point in the future, we realize, there's a lot of this group was right about what's been happening over the past year or so. And everybody loses faith in the system that we have, okay? Both sides. Just everybody's like, oh, wow, it's been proven. Okay, we've got nothing else to say. We were wrong the whole time. We were duped and used, and now we're ashamed, and we just don't trust. Nobody trusts the system. Well, in that point, that's when it's a lot easier to usher in something like a technocracy. And a technocracy ultimately gets rid of all of these elected officials that we all know aren't really doing much for us, and then instead replaces it with the top scientists, the engineers, all these people who are ultimately making decisions without a whole bunch of bureaucracy getting in the way. And this is why like places in China are able to just basically build an entire city overnight. because they don't have all the bureaucracy that we do. You know, oh, we need budgets, and then we have to prove the use case for these budgets, and this has to go through this group, and then that group, and another group, and then everybody has to agree, and if anybody disagrees, then it goes out the window and starts over, and they have to keep rewriting, and this and that. We're seeing that right now. It seems like you can push anything through if it serves the right agenda, and it just goes through. I don't even know how some of the stuff is getting through because it's mind-boggling, but that's where we're at. Ultimately, a technocracy in some sense is similar, except it doesn't even have to go through any of those processes. So that being said, a technocracy would ultimately fundamentally change the way our entire government operates, because there'd be very little government at that point. It's all in the hands of a select number of people that are not elected. It's based off of what they've accomplished, a whole other different variables that have nothing to do with the public's perception of them whatsoever. In some cases, you might not even know who the hell these people are. I mean, I'm just saying. If you want to talk about a pure democracy, well, then you can look at Switzerland, because they're a true form of democracy. There are pros and cons to either form of rule, so to speak, right? Now, what I'm seeing, even with a lot of these new tax, the new tax situation, how it's like, okay, anything, it used to be like $10,000, you have to report it and you have to go through some paperwork, not that big of a deal, but now it's like $600, and the government's basically saying, if you have more than $600, we want to know if you buy a coffee with it. We want to know everything you do, and we want to make sure that you're paying your taxes, period. And where we're heading is we're heading into a place where not only is digital currency going to be just easier for everyone, but we're heading into a place where the governments want to know everything, right? They want to know everything. They want to know where we're putting our money, where it's coming from. They want to make sure it's taxed in every possible way, without any loopholes, without any, the government wants it all back. And a part of why is because with the amount of money that they're just basically printing ad nauseum, they're trying to offset the inflation. The only way they can offset that inflation is by taxing us even more and more and more and more. So while they're debasing the value of the dollar, they're trying to correct some of that in terms of inflation by basically raising taxes across the board. So anything that the government does with all this money and whatever the ways they are using to justify printing so much of it, well, a lot of people say, well, if they're able to print all this money, why are they taxing us? It's a form of control. It's how they keep us down. Well, to some degree, maybe that's true. That could be the opinion of many, but the reality is they're trying to offset the inflation of all of this money printing. So they have to they might print $10 trillion for whatever reason, gender studies in Kandahar or whatever the hell's going on. I don't know. And they might see value in that for whatever reason, but then they want to offset the inflation that money printing would cause by taking some of those tax dollars off the table. So it's still a ever-growing problem that's not seemingly going to get better anytime soon. However, the other side to this, and I can't even believe I'm doing this video, I hope it is okay, because I'm just throwing ideas out there. I'm not dictating anything. Hopefully it's not too controversial, because this could all be bogus. This could all be bullshit. I mean, I don't know, okay? But I think I know what's going on. And ultimately, I think that if the government wants to track everything and they want to know where all the money's coming from and where it's going, well, they're going to want to adopt a blockchain for that. And I don't think it'll be very long until they have a way to track all of this money without using the middlemen, without using the banks. And I think that ultimately when that happens, it's just going to be a very streamlined system where no longer are you going to have to go to a bank to take out a loan or to do XYZ. You're going to utilize a digital service like a Celsius network, or maybe someday even a Coinbase or something like that. You want to take out a loan, or you want to store your cash or your SDR or whatever and earn interest on it. You're going to do that through services, right? And those services, they're I don't know if it's going to be a chip. I've seen stuff about Microsoft, of course, coming out with an implantable chip that's going to store all of this data so that everything that we do, everything we buy and sell and so forth and so on will be tracked on a blockchain. But to do that, it's also going to have to utilize something other than like SDRs for the transaction fees, if there are any, depending on how the system works, how centralized or decentralized it's going to be. Ultimately, the whole point of all of this is that everything that we're seeing transpire today, I think, is going to become the ultimate culmination of the US dollar debasing its value, while countries like El Salvador and other smaller countries are raising up their economies, and we're all a little more evenly aligned so that we can all go into the basket, create SDRs or seeders. I'll call it seeder. You want to buy a car, that car is going to cost you 30,000 seeders. Okay, cool. Zip, and you're done. You drive off in your car. It's already through Internet of Things and all these other blockchain-based services that transfer a title, everything. It's all going to be stored on your little chip or whatever. I mean, I'm telling you, this is what's going to happen. This is coming. I mean, it's all coming. It's all in development. I've read through the white papers. There's so many different projects. When I say people are going to be utilizing blockchain technology and not even know they're using it, that's what I'm talking about. Wow, this is already kind of getting along. I hope this video does not get shut down. I'm just brainstorming, YouTube. Please don't punish me. Anyway, for example, the Chinese government's massive Belt and Road Initiative could be conducted in eSDRs. Oh, well, what was the big token that I was bullish on? Started with an M. Not Matic. Was it Matrix AI? I don't remember what it was. But that they were supposed to be big facilitators and one of the only approved blockchains for the Belt and Road Initiative. How things change in a few years. In the longer term, an international financial center such as London or Hong Kong could spearhead experimentation with eSDRs using blockchain technology, with special swap facilities being created to make the asset more liquid. And that's exactly what's going to happen. You might still have your Bitcoin as your primary store of value for whatever reason, and you might utilize other digital tokens for whatever services they may be offering you. But ultimately, the interoperability, which is one of the reasons why Cardano has always been such a favorite of mine, because it's been designed and built with so much interoperability and functionality and programmability in mind, because you're going to need something like that as your base layer of blockchain tech to facilitate a lot of these swaps. One token talking to another token, smart contracts talking to other smart contracts, and there's going to be a whole underlining system to the way we live our lives. And ultimately, when we're making purchases and things, it's probably just going to swap in and out of SDRs. And I'm telling you, SDR is what I think is going to become the one world currency. I really absolutely do. Another imperative would be to create an eSDR denominated debt market, which would appeal to countries that want to avoid getting caught in the crossfire between reserve issuing countries. Multinational firms and regional and international financial institutions should provide the needed supply of assets. On the demand side, eSDR denominated long-term bank debts could be used by pension funds, insurance companies, and sovereign wealth funds. The eSDR denominated debt market would even be good for all reserve currencies, except the US dollar, as their weight is determining the asset's value exceeds their current shares in foreign exchange markets. In the longer term, the eSDR's rise could put added pressure on the US to rein in its spending. Well, it's not reining anything in yet. The rise of cryptocurrencies has created a unique opportunity for market forces to spearhead a shift toward a truly neutral reserve asset. With US leadership more unpredictable than ever, it is an opportunity that should not be missed. This is straight off of the World Economic Forum, folks. So I hopefully I've explained enough that kind of puts things into perspective in terms of where I see us heading. It's eSDR or Cedar. I think we're going to be calling our future money Cedars. What blockchain it operates from, whether it's a new proprietary blockchain developed in-house by whatever government. This is ultimately, I believe, going to be a World Economic Forum, a Bilderberg, a UN. This is going to be a decision ultimately made and facilitated by these groups. And I think that what's happening right now is a significant economic change on a global level. Every country is affected by what's happening right now, right? And I believe that it's honestly, well, you know, I can't say that. I just think that everything's happening the way it is for a reason. And, you know, even like Alex Mashinsky has said, and many others, what is it, like every 100 years or something to that effect? Every 100 years or so, we go through a complete economic reform. It's happening right now. We're in a significant economic reform. I think the ancient Romans outlasted the majority in terms of like their economic system, but even that collapsed. So I think what's happening right now is we are lifting up some of the countries that need lifting up, while we're kind of suppressing some of the countries that need suppressing, so that things are a much more level playing field. And ultimately, it'll enable us to adopt something like an SDR as a global currency that enables people. You know, personally, I wish they would just push this out. Like, if it's coming, let's have it. Let's do it. You know, because why wait? You know, let's start pushing this out. You know, I like being on the forefront of things. I like figuring things out, trying to get a better understanding as what the future holds, so I could be at the forefront of that. That's one of the whole reasons I got into crypto. And I feel even at, you know, getting into cryptocurrencies in 2017, I still came into the picture a little late, right? I mean, considering Bitcoin started in 2009, I mean, there's a long time there for it to kind of fester and build and grow, and I missed a lot of that. And so I want to make sure that I'm in line with what is happening, and I understand what is happening. This isn't a I don't know what the word I'm trying to use. This isn't a menacing kind of you know, like a thought process or review. It's not like a conspiracy type anything. It's just me really looking at what information is provided, what was issued a long time ago, how that relates to what's happening today, and making sense of it all so that I'm prepared for the future that's coming. I think that there's a lot of positive potential in the coming future. I just think that what we are used to, the way we're used to thinking about things, is definitely change being forced. For better or worse, I don't know. I think ultimately it just depends on what the true motives and intent. Some are going to say it's for world domination and control over the public. Some are saying it's to bring us all to. I've always had, and I've said this on my channel many times, I've always hoped that, you know, as the world comes together and unifies resources, unifies all resources, whether it's financial or the people, the minds, the powers, the whatever, and that we're able to start utilizing all of these things together as a global race, not black, white, brown, whatever, not, Christian, Catholic, not Republican, Democrat. None of that bullshit ultimately matters to me. To other people, I mean, there's been class warfare, I'm sure, since the cavemen. Okay, there's always a reason why somebody's trying to feel better, more important, or more powerful than somebody else. There's always a reason why somebody wants to, separate themselves from the rest on some sort of high horse. But in the grand scheme of things, when I think about the not just the world, but when I think about the universe as a whole, we're just people. We're literally people. We all take a piss. We all take a shit. We all do the same stuff. Nobody is truly better than anybody else. The only thing that's truly defined in some cases why some people have more power is because moves were made by a select few many, many, many years ago, and they receded. And then it's just a lineage from there, right? People are born into power and wealth and generational authority now. They didn't earn it. Half of them aren't even that bright, but they all work together. And I think that ultimately, if we can start working together as one unit, one global unit, then we can truly start achieving great new things elsewhere, on Mars, beyond Mars, and there's so much more to existence. In my opinion, than what we see in front of us. And I am cautiously skeptical yet optimistic about what the future could potentially hold for mankind. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But as far as a global currency, I think you just saw it. I think it's going to be the eSDR. I think it's going to be the Cedar. And I think that ultimately it's everything else that we do as a society, utilizing things like the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, so forth and so on. All of that is just going to cross swap in a variety of different services and with the eSDR. So on that note, hopefully this at least makes you think. Maybe it drives you to, start reading, researching, better understanding what else is going on in the world around us today, because it doesn't look pretty. But, we just have to wait and see. I think that there are definitely other ways of accomplishing what we're trying to accomplish without doing what we're doing today. But I could be wrong. Who am I? I'm just some old dude on the interwebs that doesn't know shit. I know enough to know I don't know shit. So on that note, crow your coins, and I'll see you again soon.